I'd like to take this time to welcome everyone in attendance to the November 2022 Langston County Planning Commission meeting. And thank all the members for coming in attendance. Did everyone receive their packets prior to tonight's meeting and have time to review the minutes from last month's meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Any changes or modifications needed? I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Before we leave that, I did have a comment on the minutes. On page 4, about two-thirds of the way down, it says, Mr. Davenport asked Mr. Chupp if he was talking about the owner being physically in the house at the time of rental. And it goes on, Mr. Chupp replied, yes, for the hosted short-term rentals. I may have said that, but I didn't really mean that. It would be unrealistic. It would be unrealistic to expect the owner to be there all the time. And in fact, I think in the rest of our rental proposed ordinance, we talk about the owner having to spend the night there in a hosted short-term rental. But other than that, he has to be available or one of his representatives within 60 minutes. So, Latoya, you were right in
He's not present.
saying that was unrealistic, and that's not what the ordinance is intended to do.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you, Dave. Moving right along, we have one public hearing on the docket tonight regarding Comprehensive Plan Review, Chapter 7, Land Use and the Economy. Mr. Farrell?
Yes, sir. So what we have tonight is a public hearing for Chapter 7. We've been working on it, I guess, 3 months. I feel like that's pretty good for my first time.
I think you did a great job.
So if you guys saw any changes or anything you'd like to reword or before it goes to the,
Anybody have any comments before we open up public hearing?
Yes, I have one on page 7-25. Down at the bottom, we say encourage the creation of a Lancaster County parks and public access. It doesn't, we're missing some words or something here.
where
Public
it says
access
parks and
sites.
public access sites?
Maybe we need to add in the word department,
We,
How about committee?
committee,
Yeah.
fine.
Lancaster County Parks Committee and Public Access?
Well, I would say Lancaster County Parks and Public Access Sites Committee.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dave. I've got on the following page, 7-26, the last paragraph of the last sentence of the highlighted red paragraph.
yes, sir.
And looking it over, could that be changed to be just a little bit easier to read?
Sure.
And suggestion would be, given the median household income in the county, an estimated, whatever that number is, 4828, in the year 2020, and then from there, after that comma, which is higher than the U.S. average of whatever that number was, period. Just so it reads a little bit easier.
Oh, sure.
And then we probably don't even need the word given.
So take
Because-
that up.
Okay.
There's no ending to it.
Okay. Yep.
That's all I saw. Other than that, I thought you did a great job on all the revisions.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much. Anybody else have anything before we open up public hearing? All right. We'll take this time to open up the public comment section of this meeting regarding Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 7. If you have anything to say, please come up to the podium, state your name and your district. Yes, sir.
Since we're making corrections, on page 7-26, 28. Down the bottom, inventory. It says the 2010 census showed X to the 2021 census. I believe the census was 2020. Wasn't it?
Yep.
Good catch.
Every 10 years.
Well, it got delayed because of COVID,
Right.
so
But they still call it
I think they
2020.
still call it the 2020 census.
Yep.
So that's, yeah.
Yep.
Right here, just be 2020.
Is that also true on the next page, 29? Where you're comparing amounts from 2010 to 8% in the year 2021? In two places? Maybe others. I've just noticed it now. Otherwise, it's a good job. Glad we're getting it done.
Just
Now you could
just go
start
back and
over
double
again
check those numbers.
for the next 5 years.
That works.
It's
Right,
five,
Don? Every 5 years you have to do a
it's
review.
5 years from the date of approval of the amendment by the Board of Supervisors. So after they approve it, then it'll be 5 years from that.
That's
Because it's
getting
taken,
close.
I mean,
Getting close.
this was started in 18.
I know.
Yeah, so, unbelievable.
Well, the wheel's always moving. Thank you, Mr. Casella. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add, comment regarding Chapter 7? Glenn, do we have anyone online? No, sir. Yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name's Maria Getoff. I own a vacation rental property management company, and I serve the entire county, so I don't necessarily have a district that I represent, that I,
This is,
This is for regarding the comprehensive plan review. This isn't. But thank you. Anyone else have anything regarding Chapter 7? Okay, we will now close this public comment section portion of the meeting.
Ty, I did have a comment.
Yes.
On the very last page, the last sentence says these task forces will include representation from all perspectives of the county. And I'm not sure if that's really what we want to say there. I'm not sure. I thought maybe, if I'm reading it correctly, maybe what we really are thinking is that the task forces will include representation from a diverse group of taxpayers. I'm not sure.
Actually, it's saying the same thing the previous sentence said, in my opinion. You agree? We have to say it twice?
Yeah, it is the same,
Can we
basically
strike it?
saying the same thing. We could just strike the last sentence altogether.
Yeah. Good catch. Thank you. Anything else? Anything else, guys? No, sir. Okay. I think we're done with Chapter 7. Can we get a recommendation, please, to forward this to the board
So moved.
as amended tonight.
as amended with the changes noted, mostly clerical?
I'll move that we forward our update to the comprehensive plan, Chapter 7, to the Board of Supervisors with the recommendation that they approve it,
Thank you, Dave. We've got a motion on the,
including tonight's amendment.
thank you. Thank you, Dave. We've got a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Good job, Bill, Mr. Farrell, on that one. Thank you. Okay, public hearing. We've got one consideration item on our docket tonight, short-term rental issues and possible zoning ordinance amendment to address said issues. Mr. Gill.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of months ago, the Board of Supervisors asked that the Planning Commission review this issue because of the number of complaints that the county staff was receiving regarding short-term rentals. The Planning Commission staff got a hold of several different ordinances from various jurisdictions, and the Planning Commission looked at that. I took a stab last month at creating a draft ordinance based mainly on 6 different jurisdictions: the towns of Irvington and Urbana, since they're close by, the cities of Williamsburg and Virginia Beach for a little larger perspective, and the counties of Goochland and Louisa because of their rural natures as well. You all heard that, got a look at that first draft last month. You suggested some changes. I added those changes to the ordinance. They're all highlighted and bolded, and for the additions, and the strikes are highlighted and lined through. For the benefit of audience members, this is not a public hearing tonight for the short-term rental ordinance. The process is that the Planning Commission discusses this, creates a draft, and then they will hold a public hearing at a future meeting. And after that public hearing, much like just happened with Chapter 7 of the Comprehensive Plan, the Planning Commission will forward some sort of a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors will then also hold a public hearing. Usually, the chairman decides whether or not any public input will be heard at meetings, and it's the chairman's prerogative. But if anyone came here tonight specifically looking to speak on the short-term rental ordinance, you may or may not be able to, because this is not a public hearing on the short-term rental ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
I can go through this and help you understand where the changes came through. I know Mrs. Booth was not here last month. I hope she was able to glean right much from the minutes, and maybe you went back and looked at it on tape, because I think a lot of people are doing that nowadays. But anyway, the short-term rental, a zoning ordinance has a purpose and intent, and the purpose and intent is stated there. Definitions would also be in Article 1 definitions, but they are duplicated here for ease of reference. The short-term rental definition, the short-term rental operator definition are identical to the definitions that are in our short-term rental registry ordinance, which is in our code of ordinances and not the zoning ordinance. That rental registry ordinance clearly gives the Board of Supervisors the right to come back and regulate short-term rentals through the zoning ordinance, which they have decided to do. Based on discussions with the Planning Commission thought that short-term rentals should be divided into 2 categories: hosted and unhosted. The hosted version would be an owner-occupied dwelling. You'll see there in highlights a little more clarification there. Owner occupies a dwelling for at least 185 days per calendar year. That was Mr. Chupp's suggestion. Don't know if that's what the Planning Commission wants. The previous words there state an owner-occupied dwelling. So if you all think it needs more clarification, there it is. There was also discussion about adding a maximum number of rented nights per calendar year for the hosted short-term rental, and 120 was mentioned, so that is added there. Under the unhosted short-term rental definition, previously it had a limit of 14 people total. Occupancy is going to be, for overnight guests, is going to be based on the Virginia Department of Health septic system permit or the certificate of occupancy if it's public sewer, but it previously shall not exceed 14 people. The discussion last month said that it should be the same as the hosted at 10, so you'll see that change to 10 people total. And the maximum number of rented nights there is basically half a calendar year at 180. So I guess I'll stop here and let you all decide if you think this is good or it needs revision.
So,
In the at the top under the purpose and intent, middle of the second line where it says "and provides," we just need to take the S off of provides. And then I wasn't here, and I did go through everything, but I did still have a couple of clarifying questions, so I apologize. I was really curious as to what was the reasoning behind the unhosted, which seems to me is more likely to be problematic than hosted, but the unhosted is limited to 120, and the hosted is 120 and the unhosted is 180. And I'm just wondering why, like, what's the thought process behind that? And maybe it was in the minutes, I didn't see it, I was specifically looking for it.
Well, the hosted version would be where the owner is there.
Right,
You're
And,
asking about the number of days.
yeah.
yeah.
The-
Why, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that probably just got lost in translation more than anything, but I agree with you. You would think you would allow more days if it's a hosted.
That was my thought.
Well, it
Less
is.
days.
It's 180 instead of 120.
No, you got it
It's
backwards.
backwards.
No, it's, hosted short-term rental is 120.
Right,
Unhosted is 180.
right. So if it's hosted, someone's there, so they're
Yeah.
kind of monitoring. So you would think that number would be higher, but it's not, it's lower.
Well, I mean, that's, well, that's up for debate.
That's
The-
my question, like, what was
Yeah.
the?
The unhosted version is your typical short-term rental. I mean, the whole house rental, what you see, and probably 90% of them are going to be unhosted. The hosted version is where it's owner occupied, and you're going to see very few there. You know, it's up for discussion. I mean, I put in here the numbers that were brought up last month, so. you
Yeah,
can-
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, why those numbers were out there. Was there conversation about why one would be higher than the other that I missed?
There really wasn't, Tar, but that's a good point, but there should be some consistency, I think.
Yeah. I think we probably talked about a lot of things and that might have been transposed, I don't know, but I agree with you.
But her point was that if it's hosted, it should probably, in theory, be more
More days than the unhosted.
because it's less chance of it being, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's less chance of it being
Nuisance.
a nuisance.
That's my opinion.
Well, it would be, for sure, but the unhosted version is what probably 90% of them are, and, I mean, if you're going to restrict them to a third of the year, I mean, how many of them are going to continue to operate? So it gets back to what Mr. Lee has brought up about, the county's promoting tourism. Do we want to restrict these things to the
Well,
point?
that's right there in chapter 7, but I don't think
Yeah.
that you're talking about restricting, she's just saying that it would make sense if there were.
120 should be 180.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, not,
I don't think it
not
should be
trying to.
less. I'm not
trying
saying
to-
that the 180 should be less. But I
Oh.
think if it's hosted, it should be
Okay, I
more.
thought you were saying swap the numbers.
No,
Not
she just
necessarily.
wanted to be consistent.
I think if it's hosted, they should
Okay, understood.
But
have a
not
higher
to cut,
number.
yeah.
I got you.
just to-
So, okay, I got you.
Is that the only difference we have between the two, is just the number of days?
Pretty much.
No, the hosted is owner occupied.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Besides just the definition.
Yeah. Yeah, other than that, it's the same. I
Well, the
mean,
big one is that hosted doesn't require a
the special exception.
That's the big thing.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Still require a permit, but not a special exception, correct?
They have to register.
Yeah, I'm registered, that's what,
Yes.
sorry.
And my only other question that I had was on the next page, under 2936. This information, the registry needed to be retained for 4 years. I was just curious where the 4 years came from.
That was something that
That was
Mr.
something that
Chubb
was
threw
just
up.
basically
Yeah.
thrown up
Just
in the
thrown out
air,
there.
yeah. I've read some of the ones that were 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Again, it was just sort of placing a number in there.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Gill, sorry.
So the 180 days under the unhosted, you're okay with that? That shouldn't be changed?
So are we saying that they should both be the same, both be 180?
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Or at least some consistency. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not saying one way or the
that-
other,
no,
even
I-
if there should be.
I think that's fine.
Move on.
Please.
The general regulations, they're pretty uniform throughout most ordinances. All short-term rentals must register unless they're specifically exempted through state code. All short-term rentals shall pay the transient occupancy tax through the Commissioner of Revenue's office. No more than 2 rental contracts during any consecutive 7-day period, and limited to operating in 1 structure per property. They have to provide adequate off-street parking for its guests at a minimum of 1 parking space per bedroom. The liability insurance is $500,000. I know Mr. Chupp had suggested $1 million. Different jurisdictions have 500 or $1 million.
No, that's fine. I mean, it opens it up to,
Yeah.
it can be $1 million if they want to do it, right?
2936, last month, it was stated that we should include gross receipts so that it would be, we would be able to determine if the correct amount of taxes had been paid. County attorney has not chimed in on that yet, but once the planning commission is set with a draft, I will ask him for an opinion on the entire document. And again, the retaining for 4 years was just what was talked about last month. All short-term rental operators shall post in a prominent place within the rental unit.
Hey, can we just back up one? You touched on it when we first started, but short-term rental occupancy maximums, we clearly state that it's based on the Virginia Department of Health, but we don't have in there for when it's on sewer,
Yeah.
which most of the county properties are not.
It's by the certificate, it's by the CO.
But I didn't read that in there.
It's in there.
Okay, I missed it then, because I made a note about that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in the definition,
Okay.
in
Sorry.
both of them, yeah. The short-term rental operators have to post the county ordinances and rules, regulations, trash and waste pickup, if there are any, the emergency telephone numbers in a prominent place within the unit. And then the short-term rental operator, his or her employee, or an authorized independent contractor shall be able to respond to a guest, law enforcement, or local government official in order to address any issues within 60 minutes. These are all things that other jurisdictions' ordinances had in place. Under short-term rental occupancy regulations, the occupancy for overnight guests are limited to a maximum of 2 persons per bedroom, excluding their minor children. The number of bedrooms are determined by the Virginia Department of Health septic system permit or the CO for public sewer. However, the maximum number of overnight guests shall not exceed 10 people for either the hosted or the unhosted. 2942, the maximum number of people permitted to be on any short-term rental site, including overnight guests and invited guests at other times, shall not exceed 20 persons at any time during the entire rental period. It was talked about, what about if someone had rented this for a wedding or family reunion or something of that nature? How can you address that? So I added this language: for unhosted short-term rentals, a different limit may be established as a condition of approval of the special exception by the Board of Supervisors if an adequate management plan for larger gatherings is presented with the special exception application. That's for the unhosted. For hosted short-term rentals, a different limit may be approved on a case-by-case basis if an adequate management plan for larger gatherings is submitted to the Director of Planning and Land Use for review at least 30 days prior to the proposed gathering.
I guess the only thing I was thinking on that was when the person comes in before the board for a special exception, at that time, they would also submit for a permit to have more than 20 people at that same time.
Yeah, the thinking would be that they would present a management plan for a large type gathering, weddings, family reunions, or whatever, And I would, they would probably have to put a maximum on it, And that would be presented with the special exception application, so you all could make that a condition of approval if you chose to do so.
See, he gets into that thing where it's ongoing, then it's,
Commercial.
You've done it, and so you can have one once a month, twice a month,
Well, I think you all could limit it, too, as part of the special exception approval.
Yeah. It's something that I think we need to think.
I just
further.
look at it as then you're going from residential use to commercial use, and you're not adhering to our zoning ordinances. That's just my feeling on it. For the events. Because it clearly states when we first, there's no, well, not, we haven't gotten
Yeah.
there yet, but no, I mean, we've said it twice, no commercial activities.
Well,
Well, nothing says commercial activity like a wedding venue, to me.
Basically, the same language is there for that as well,
Yeah.
on the next page.
But you see where, I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's-
Well, last month, you all said, how can we tweak this to allow
Yeah,
weddings and things? So
I think that's good, that language. You don't like that language?
here's my attempt at it.
To me personally, I think you're going down a slope where, we've got zoning regulations in place to protect property owners, residential, commercial, so. Now you can have commercial activity going on after the fact if someone purchased their residential house. You follow me? I just feel as if it's a commercial use, when you're throwing parties and things like that, when you knowingly are throwing parties.
See, I think that's
agree.
the kind of thing that the board can take into consideration when they're considering the application. How much land the people have, how much separation there is from neighbors, that sort of thing. And, if it's tight quarters, they can turn them down.
Yeah, I just know that there's a line, because what we're drafting here, again, drafting, is, we're explicitly stating twice, no commercial use. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
That's all I'm
once,
saying.
really.
Hmm?
Once, really. If you flip the page.
Well, you said consecutive, no commercial uses, period. Commercial uses are prohibited. period.
Unless, no, it's not period, comma,
Define commercial use, though.
yeah.
They're not selling something out of the house.
Maybe I can't
They're just-
define exactly what they're doing, but I can tell you what's not a residential.
So the person that's having a wedding with a special exception is not benefiting from that event. They're not charging admission to the wedding. It's not, if you want to split hairs, what's a commercial
Well, I thought
activity?
about this too. I think,
If they throw a party and are charging,
one way to
admission,
look at
that's
this too, and one more thing I was looking at, Tom, is, if you don't allow any food service in these residential homes, I think that would, bed and breakfast type of situation, just along those lines. Then, if you go there, then how could you have a party? I mean, listen, I'm not arguing, I'm just telling you kind of what I'm thinking.
People have backyard weddings all the time.
Oh, sure
that are
they do.
catered
Sure they do.
at
Yeah.
There's no question.
residences.
But
But-
then the owner's there
but they're
and
not
they're being
receiving an income.
responsible for what's happening, whereas if it's a rental and it's unhosted, then that could be disaster.
Well, that's,
That's where the
one
special
thing the
exception
board
comes
can
in.
consider in whether or not to approve this application to do this kind of thing. And they can specify that the owner should be there for occasions like that.
I guess it does, Bill's thought about how busy is the board going to be with special exceptions?
yeah, it's,
Or is it a special exception? or is
Well, I'm
it
just trying to
a
get ahead of,
permit?
because you know it's gonna come up.
oh yeah, it's gonna come up,
Yeah.
but, the conditions that we put on it, based on the application, can control a lot of what you all are talking about.
Yeah.
And you do that on a case by case, the same thing when you get down to the hosting. the one that's host, we doing it case by case anyhow. So the unhosted gonna fall in that same line. It's gonna be case by case. If you got 20 acres of land, we might allow some things there where, but I think a good idea, in my opinion, is if you had an event, whether it's a wedding or family reunion or whatever, the requirement for the landowner to be there, or a person, somebody named responsible, you know, it could be.
That's good, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Responsible party
Yeah,
there.
responsible.
yeah,
party.
that could be one of the conditions,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And then too, the size of the parcel is gonna matter,
That's
because
gonna matter.
if you're gonna have a large gathering, you gotta take into account parking.
yeah,
So, I mean, you can't be parking on other people's property, you can't be parking on the side of the road
yeah.
to inhibit emergency vehicles going up and down the road if they had to. So, I mean, that's where the management plan comes into play.
So
To,
each one of these, regardless of it's hosted or unhosted, is gonna be determined on a case-by-case basis.
it's on a case-by-case basis. The difference is for the unhosted version, which, you know, probably 90% of them are, it's gonna be part of the special exception process.
Come before us.
You come before you all. The hosted version is gonna be brought to the Director of Planning and Land Use and say, hey, this is what we got planned. But under the hosted version, the property owner's gonna be there, so.
Yeah.
Well, just kind of what my line of thinking was, you follow me between the commercial and the residential, and kind of time building on what you were talking about. Yeah, I mean, everybody, you know, has a wedding, maybe, not everybody, but has a wedding. 99 times out of 100, it's a family member.
Right.
So maybe it's once in a blue moon. I mean, I don't know how many daughters or sons somebody might have, but you're not gonna have a wedding every weekend in a strictly residential neighborhood is kind of what I'm saying. Anyway, just to bring it up. Sorry, Mr. Gill.
No, that's fine. I mean, this is just a draft. I'm throwing it out here so you all can, you know, work it over. 29.5, short-term rental safety regulations, they're pretty standard. Smoke detector requirement, carbon monoxide detector, if you have propane, fire extinguishers, they're all pretty much governed by the building code. 29.6, prohibited activity at short-term rentals. Here's the commercial use statement.
Let me ask you something. We did have a little discussion on these wood burning
Sorry about that.
places. So when we left, I didn't know we left that they would be banned altogether. You know, the portable ones that people buy now and put in their backyard. So we saying that's prohibited, right?
That is what came from last month's meeting, but it can be changed.
Yeah, well, I was just, I mean, these are the commissioners up here. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because I didn't leave it that idea, so that's what you all saying.
I'm coming to the country, I want to sit outside, and camp around the fire, that's just me.
Well, I think if it was a stone pit,
Yeah.
you know, it was okay. But the impression I got from last month's meeting was that if it was a portable one, that you all didn't want to see that there.
I can go either way on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little heavy-handed.
I agree.
We can strike that if y'all like. So,
Yeah, I was thinking that, you know, the big stress, we didn't want somebody to dig a hole like that and go and start a fire, but if you had one of those, you know, portable fire burning things that everybody's selling now,
yeah.
people buying.
Yeah, didn't we have a problem cited with that kind of thing where some renter took a portable fireplace out in the dock and set the dock on fire?
I think that was
that's what
fireworks.
prompted the whole
That was
thing.
fireworks.
Huh?
That was fireworks.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Don't give anybody any ideas.
I think you should strike that.
Is
I agree.
consensus to strike 29-6-7?
That's fine.
That's why you have liability insurance for the
Very
neighbor.
true, that's true, yeah. Getting back to the commercial use, I added the statement there, commercial uses are prohibited unless specifically authorized as a condition of approval of the special exception by the Board of Supervisors for unhosted short-term rentals, or authorized on a case-by-case basis by the Director of Planning and Land Use for hosted short-term rentals as outlined in that preceding section regarding larger gathering limits. And the only thing that comes to mind here would be, and we talked about this last month, would be like a hunting place where you go and hunt. That's a commercial type, if you're charging for, them to come there and hunt. And, I think if there's any thought of that being done, then that should be brought to the board during the special exception process.
So when somebody registers, they're gonna register as a hosted or unhosted venue? That's on the registration?
We'll have to change that. Right now, it's just a short-term rental. So
And so they come and register as an unhosted short-term?
we will break it down into two
And then-
categories.
And then they wanna have a wedding there. And they say, hey, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be hosting, I'm gonna operate it as a hosted short-term rental. Then they don't need to get a special exception through the board, they just
Correct.
would come to you all with the plan.
Yeah, they would come to Bill and say, hey,
Because that's
Yeah.
what we're driving at, is
Yeah.
that we're not, basically, you're not gonna allow unhosted venues to operate. You have to be there present, which makes it a hosted. And you're saying a hosted event just requires going to you all
yes.
with a plan.
But if it's an unhosted short-term rental,
Yeah.
by definition, the owner doesn't have to be there. But if they want to have weddings, then as part of the special exception approval,
Right.
they will make that known to the board. The board can grant it or not. If they grant it, they'll place conditions on it
Right.
and say, well, the owner must be there for these type of occasions.
Which it drops down to a hosted
Yeah.
short-term rental for that
Right.
weekend,
For that weekend.
which might take some of the time out of your hands. If they just come here first and say, I'm hosting it, I'll be there as a hosted, they don't have to come to the board of supervisors. Just saves your time.
Well, this is done up front anyway.
Yeah, it would be done up front.
It's-
Yeah, and so, yeah, at that point, after the board had approved it, then they could bring that management plan to the Director of Planning and Land Use and say, here's our plan for this occasion, this event, and it would not have to go back to the board.
Thank you.
Those prohibited activities were taken from the Irvington Town Ordinance because I think it's important that there be some consistency between the towns and the county. On the last page, 29-6-8, that was,
2967, is that in conflict with what we just were talking about?
the consensus was to strike that, so I have,
Just take it right out.
Okay.
yeah,
all right,
we're going to do away with that.
Okay.
And 2968 was dealing with previously hunting and firearms. I crossed out hunting, left the firearms, and said guests and visitors at a short-term rental shall not discharge firearms on the property unless it is a part of a legal hunting activity.
I think we're getting ourselves in a hornet's nest to mention firearms in this ordinance. I mean, if you read this literally, guests at a short-term rental shall not discharge firearms on the property unless it is part of a legal hunting activity. Well, actually, if somebody does a short-term rental right now on a 10-acre rental parcel, and it's deer hunting season, deer hunting is a legal hunting activity. So it would automatically be allowed under this. I think this is a topic we should avoid. We're talking about somebody's home. It should be up to them whether or not they allow firearms, hunting, any of this stuff. If we get into this, we're going to get into a big discussion on whether people have a right to bring arms into these rental properties. I mean, people have rights in various states to take firearms into state office buildings, state properties. I think we're getting unnecessarily into a hornet's nest. This should be up to the property owner, the homeowner. We're talking about his own home. He should be the one to decide that, not us. I would,
Give you an
I would
example of
propose
something
we-
Could happen. There's a guy, in the Whitestone area, and I've been to his house a bunch of times. We shoot skeet clay pigeons. So what we saying, if he was a short-term operator, then we would not be able to do that. I'm not hunting, we shoot clay pigeons, but it's discharging firearms on his property. So we might be getting into something that he's
Yeah.
saying right there, and that's, yeah, so.
I'm not opposed to striking anything in this ordinance if you all are okay with
Short
it.
is better.
But there's.
I just threw it together so you all could,
Yeah,
could
yeah.
could take it,
there's
pick it
zoning-
apart.
There's laws out there that say you cannot discharge a firearm within so many feet of a building, right? Of a residential.
I'm not,
No, I have to check the code.
yeah, I'm not positive of that. I know, like, the towns have ordinances where you can't discharge firearms within town limits.
And it has to have a
Yeah.
safe backstop.
And there's certain feet you gotta be away from the highway, things like that.
Yeah, so there's limits on where you can discharge guns.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hear what you're saying, but there are limits. You just can't shoot guns.
So you think it's a good idea to have that in here? What is the advantage of putting it in here?
Just peace and quiet to the neighbors.
How about crossbows? Can people shoot crossbows? How about the fireworks? Are they allowed to, are we gonna regulate whether or not they can shoot off fireworks?
Actually, we do.
I mean,
don't we?
we're talking about somebody's home here, and it should be up to the homeowner to decide whether these things could be done or not done.
Yeah, and
Well, like what Tom was saying, I mean, there are certain laws that restrict it anyway.
yeah.
And laws that restrict fireworks.
Mhm.
So, to Dave's point, maybe we don't want it stirred,
This came from, I think it was Louisa, a rural locality as
I
well.
think it's fine.
I've not seen it in any other one,
striking it.
any other ordinance.
Struck me funny when I read it.
What do you think, Ron?
No, I think we putting restrictions on short-term rentals, and it's discharge. And I don't see a problem with that. It's not that they can't carry it, but to fire it. And, there's some restrictions. So I don't see anything wrong with that, but anyhow.
I like that as a consideration, you don't have to make a decision today,
Yeah,
it's still in there.
I see a problem with it in the text that I was talking about, because
Yeah.
you're not hunting or nothing, you just down there sport shooting, really.
Mhm.
You sport shooting, and the guy invited you as a guest to sport shoot on his property, and if he was a short-term rental under this, he wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a short-term rental, but let's say he was. Yeah, might be, that's right. He might be, I don't know.
Well, again, it's, just something to think about. It was in, like I said, I think Louisa, and so I brought it over to this because they're a rural locality like we are. 29-6-9, last month's meeting suggested this. No tents, travel trailers, recreational vehicles, or similar portable or temporary shelters may be used as a short-term rental.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm gonna go back to where I was last month. And for you guys listening and gals listening, boats. Do we want to place them under the recreational vehicle status?
That's up for you all to
Somebody's
decide.
cruising boat at the end of their dock.
Yes.
No, I'm looking at it, no, if it's the property owners leasing their own boat out on a short-term rental basis.
Yeah, but it's not a boat on a trailer, it's down at the dock.
Yeah, down to that.
And you see that all over the place where
Yeah.
people rent boats and all the time
I think.
in waterfront towns. You see it out there, I mean, you can go rent a boat in
All right, well then,
Annapolis.
here we go, devil's advocate. What, are we gonna allow 20 people on somebody's boat? There's no limit on it. If
Well,
we're,
there's
if we're
Coast Guard.
Well, the
allowing it
same-
as a short-term rental.
There's Coast
That-
Guard limits.
it's Coast Guard
That's-
limits on
I mean,
it.
there's liability, and we're not, we can't regulate stupidity.
Well, I see what you're saying.
If it's registered.
So, I don't know if you can say,
So we're limiting this to one structure. A boat's not considered a structure, so now you can have two short-term rental units.
Well, that's a good point. If you want to allow a boat, we'd have to go back to 29-3-3 and think about the last part there where it says, shall be limited to operating in one structure per property.
the boat that's on the water, on the property,
No, that's state property.
it's on state property, and it's Coast Guard registered. You probably can't.
So I'd go ahead and put 4 boats in, then
Well,
my dock.
well, we can regulate the dock.
Yeah, if the boat is tied to the dock, it's subject to the zoning ordinance.
I'm just saying, it's
Yeah.
gonna happen. It's already happened. This is a draft.
It is.
Bring it out now.
What's the old saying? Throw it against the wall, see if it sticks?
They do a floating house, floating tiny house.
Now, they did get voted down several years ago in Lancaster County, floating houses.
Is that-
I'm just,
Float boats.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a 19-foot Carolina skiff that's C-rated for 11 people. 19 foot. So it's not hard to get a boat that's rated for 20 people. So now, if you don't go back and look at it that way, look at it as a recreational type of vehicle, you can have 40 people on that property, and right next to you, partying on the dock, partying at the house.
Not at my HOA. I think I saw you one day with 11 guys.
They probably did, probably did. And you did.
It was a-
So I'm just, it's gonna happen. So we might as well think about it right now.
Well, I mean, this is for you all to,
If nothing else, it's gotta be considered part of the maximum amount of people that you could have, or a structure, or to some degree, it has to be defined.
if it's tied to the dock, it is part, it's governed by the zoning ordinance.
Is it?
Yep. Because the dock is attached to land. And the land is governed by the zoning ordinance.
Would you agree that it's not a structure?
It is not a structure.
Okay. Just saying.
Yeah. Right now, boats are not in that statement. If you all did want to add boats to that statement, then we'd have to go back and
Well, how about
reword
this?
29.
At least say you can't
33.
rent your boat out that's in your driveway on a trailer.
Yeah, that was my
That's
intent
Yeah.
when I
portable.
mentioned boats.
Yeah.
I wish the hell I'd never mentioned.
That's portable.
Well, that's
That's
what,
Boats
what
and
I
your
had in
firearms.
mind.
Keep your
Ties.
firearms to yourself.
Good thoughts, good thoughts.
You just know it's gonna happen, I'm just saying.
It's happening now. I don't have any issue with it.
I mean, I always look at it like a living board, quite honestly, which aren't allowed in most marinas.
any consensus there on that issue?
I think that, somebody who owns a home and wants to do short-term rentals, if he wants to put people on his 36-foot sailboat, I think we should allow it. What's the harm to the community?
Then what's the difference if I had a 36-foot camping trailer in the yard and put them in there?
Well, I think that's very different.
How? Okay.
I don't know, I just do.
I was trying to come up with an answer, but I just did. Yeah. Down there on the water,
Yeah,
not in the front
Well,
yard.
if nothing else,
side
even
yard.
if it's the consensus or lack of consensus for me personally, you gotta define it to where you can't have a structure and a boat at the same time. Lease it.
Well, the way to do that,
Gives you two, and that's, no, it explicitly states that you only want one.
But boat is not a structure.
No.
Exactly. So, I mean, there should be some clarification, that if you're gonna lease your boat out, that's fine, go ahead and do it. But you can't do that in another accessory building and have a capacity of 40 people. I mean, that just goes around everything we're trying to do here. Just throws in the face.
it would take some wordsmithing for 2933. Instead of structure, you'd have to come up with a different word that could include a boat.
Don't even get in the floating patio homes. That's all, we'll keep that over in Deltaville.
We're still limited to 10 people for the property.
Yeah, right.
And we put boats on trailers in the recreational vehicle, we could certainly have that.
What's that?
Boats on trailers to that. I mean,
Portable.
Yeah, I think
okay.
portable,
Portable, anything on wheels, you can't rent out.
yeah.
Portable or temporary shelters, again, it's a boat or shelter, I guess it is, I don't know. Anyway, I just know it's gonna come up.
The last section is enforcement. You wanted specific enforcement measures spelled out. The previous version just said the enforcement would be as prescribed in Article 15 of the zoning ordinance, which applies to the entire zoning ordinance. So I added 2972, which says a short-term rental operator shall be prohibited from offering a specific property for short-term rental in the county upon multiple violations on more than 3 occasions of applicable state and local laws, ordinances, and regulations as they relate to the short-term rental. That is stated in our rental registry ordinance as well, just duplicated here. And because a special exception would be involved for unhosted versions, 29-7-3 states that in addition to other remedies available for violations of the county zoning ordinance, upon the occurrence of a violation of a condition imposed on a special exception permit, the Board of Supervisors may revoke the special exception permit after notice and hearing as required in the Code of Virginia 15-2-2204. So the board can revoke a special exception permit if there are repeated violations.
Yeah.
At least it spells it out.
The violations, is there a monetary penalty?
It is based on the level of misdemeanor under Article 15, and I can't remember what those are right off hand, but it is a civil penalty, a monetary penalty.
We don't need to list that here, something different.
Well, 29-7-1 says that Article 15, which spells all that out,
Okay.
applies. So, I mean, I could go in and, add that as well, but
I think you
And
you
those
covered
are-
when you said Article 15.
Yeah.
You don't need to get in.
We don't wanna
Those
get
are
the
adequate, it's not like a
Yeah.
$5 fine.
no, it's governed by state code, so
There's
it's,
only a maximum
Yeah.
that they can apply, which
Yeah.
isn't that much.
It's like the $500, we can only go up to $500.
right,
For
for
non-registration.
not registering.
That's, we would like to do 1,000, but you can't.
It's a tough issue because, as Mr. Lee has stated, and, the county is promoting tourism, so, I think the county would like to see, whatever the correct number of these things are, but we don't want to be inundated with complaints like we have been, so there has to be some regulation under the zoning ordinance to do that.
And building on the enforcement, Mr. Farrell, you and I were talking earlier today, I mean, you had some very, very, very preliminary conversations, and if you don't want to divulge that, that's fine, but I thought it was kind of interesting, in what you were telling me that, based on just a phone call, again, very preliminary.
Yes, sir. So I spoke with a company about, they currently regulate this short-term rental ordinance in 18 localities in Virginia. We haven't set anything in stone. It's just early stages about what they offer and how they monitor the short-term rental, how they enforce the short-term rental based on our ordinance. And like I said, it's still early stages, but as I get more information, I'll be more than happy to provide that.
Because that's always going to be the sticky wick, is how this gets enforced. In fact, it does. But thanks for reaching out on that. I just wanted to.
Worst case scenario, if we don't go down that road, that they are offering the knowledge for county staff on how to enforce it as well, at no cost. So don't feel like what you guys create, well, I think somebody said it before, the meat and potatoes behind it. You know, the goal is to have that.
Meat and potatoes, I had to be.
I think Steve.
And tell them about how many they said were in the county jurisdiction.
So they did some research for me prior to the Zoom. The entire county, which includes incorporated towns, they survey through
Hold on. What do we have on our books first?
58, sir.
Okay.
58 sites that I'm aware of that people are actually paying for their,
That's for the county jurisdiction.
the county jurisdictions. So I'll leave the towns out. So what they were able to locate, 74 sites, which I had no clue that there were even that many sites. 117 in the county, so roughly 50% is what we're regulating right now.
Not quite 50%.
Not quite.
74,
And-
74 in the county though, right?
No. They researched 74
Sites.
Of these
websites.
websites. that advertise.
looking for short-term rentals and found 117.
17.
117, okay.
That's county and town?
No,
Just county.
just county jurisdiction.
Just the county, right?
Yeah.
And not, just so you guys know, 96% were unhosted.
Yeah, 96.
Were unhosted
96%.
96%.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Get that. It's a big number. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, I do. On the first page, 29-1, purpose and intent. In the first paragraph there, we say, "The intent of this ordinance is to provide sufficient regulation of short-term rentals to ensure the welfare and safety of transient visitors." I'm not sure it's a good idea for the county to assume responsibility for the welfare and safety of transient visitors. It's basically a responsibility of the owner of the home, the person that's renting the rental property, and I don't think we should in any way indicate that we're responsible for that. I would suggest we change that to the intent of this ordinance is to provide sufficient regulation of short-term rentals to address some of the basic safety measures for keeping visitors safe and the residential character of the neighborhoods in which they are located and the interests of adjoining property owners. I don't think we should be saying anywhere that we're
Sounds good.
ensuring the welfare and safety of transient visitors.
Sounds good to me. What do you think?
I agree.
Okay with that?
Can you give me that wording?
Yeah.
No, just, I don't, I'm not going to write it down. Give it to me later,
Yeah,
written. Yeah.
so that's one. On the next page, just a minor technical thing, 29-3-4, where we talk about a minimum of one parking space per bedroom. I think we should put in the word, one parking space per rented bedroom. I mean, they may be renting one bedroom of a four-bedroom house. Does that mean they have to have 4 parking spaces? I don't think that's what we intend.
I mean, that's fine with me. I don't have any heartburn there.
Okay, on the next page,
I don't know about that.
huh?
I would be hesitant to say that because if they've applied for a permit, even though they're renting one bedroom, they're able to rent as many bedrooms as they like. So if they've got the permit, then there's no limitation on what they could do, even if they were doing one. But, you know, I mean, how egregious is 4 parking spots regardless, you know, for anything?
You know, I think that in most cases, the hosted short-term rental people have decided in advance how many bedrooms they're gonna rent. But
Yeah, I think there's a big.
I mean, in the worst-case scenario, they've got to provide a 4-car parking lot, which is pretty standard for most houses that I see. I don't think it's being overbearing.
okay,
4 cars in a driveway.
Yeah,
okay, I can see your point. I hadn't thought of that.
thank
but,
you. Just because they could change their
Yeah.
mind on the fact.
Okay, and then on the next page, 29-5, short-term rental regulations, safety regulations. I would put in there, again, because we want to leave the responsibility for safety basically on the homeowner. I would put in there the word basic in front of short-term. Call it basic short-term rental safety regulations. So we don't give the impression that these are all the safety regulations. And then I would put in parentheses after that, the short-term rental operator is basically responsible for visitors' safety and may have other safety requirements. Just to make sure that people don't think that the county is assuming responsibility for outlining all the safety requirements.
I'm fine with the word basic, I mean.
Or do you say minimal?
Minimal.
Yeah, either one.
That's probably what you said. These are the minimum requirements.
Yeah, minimum.
Down at 29-6-5, we say there shall be no amplified music audible at the property line of the short-term rental. I mean, I think we should change that music, the word music, to sound. I mean, if they have loud radio, you know, talky broadcasts, why, that's just as bad. I think really we're talking about amplified sound of any kind.
So it's more noise, just amplified noise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I talked about my thoughts on firearms. My only other thing is a question, really. We don't anywhere specify that the unhosted short-term rental operators have to get a special exception from the county. I would assume that's going to be in the definition.
No, that would be under each specific district. If you go back to the memo, we have to amend the various districts to add, so.
Okay.
Under permitted uses in each district, it would say hosted short-term rental, that would be
Right.
by right, and then unhosted short-term rental with a special exception.
Yeah, I skipped through that too. I had a tough time finding it.
Yeah.
That's all I had. I think it sounds pretty good.
Can we look at 29-6-4? Says the noise and activity at a short-term rental shall not be inconsistent. I'm just wondering if we need a double negative or if it's okay to say shall be consistent.
She got you done.
No, she She got Andrew, that came from Irvington.
That line costs a lot, didn't
Yeah, Andrew McRoberts. He's an attorney, by the way.
Yep.
So you got him.
it?
Say that again, though.
It says
I
shall
see it.
not be inconsistent. It's a double negative. There's no need for that. It should just be shall be consistent with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna
Thank
argue-
you.
You wanna argue with this?
No, I just, I read she, I was reading it, and I'm like, what did she say? I don't want to argue with the principal.
Nope. Anything else, Dawn?
No, that was it. I just wasn't sure what we were doing with the hunting piece, the firearms.
It's kind of gonna be in like
No, I think
quotation
it's,
marks until,
I think it's a very good
I think it's a couple
draft.
things, couple
and-
things need to be considered over the next 30 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
I know we came up with something on the firearms, the hunting, the wood burning, things like that. The wording just need to be, we scratch them, that's fine, but we need to make sure we get the proper language in there if we use anything, with the firearm. And we, portable fire pit.
We struck
Scratch
that. We struck that.
Scratch that. So, I think just, next 30 days, we just need to look at this thing and I don't know if you can edit to, what we did tonight and just email it out.
Yeah, I
So
can,
everybody,
I can do that. I got a couple of questions, though, clarifications to go back through. I mean, Dave's going to give me his wording under the purpose and intent for that last sentence, how that is restructured. 29(3-3), the word structure, got to come up with
yeah,
something there.
that was the whole thing I was thinking.
Yeah,
This
29
dash.
Yeah, 29-5, where we talk about minimum short-term rental safety regulations. Did you all want to include what Mr. Chupp's general statement under that was? And Dave, can you go back and read that again?
Yeah. I started off with the word basic, so it would read basic short-term rental safety regulations. And then in parentheses, the short-term rental operator is basically responsible for visitor safety and may have other safety requirements.
I think the header should be short-term rental minimum safety regulations.
Yeah.
Not leading off the sentence, but
Right,
defining safety regulations.
right. I just added the word minimum short-term rental safety regulations.
No, not before short. You put the word before safety.
I can do that.
In my,
I like that.
But my thought is, do you want to include that general statement in some fashion that Dave has just
You're
read
just worried about county liability here.
there?
Yeah,
No, I'm fine with that.
I want people to understand that the basic responsibility for safety is with the homeowner.
Maybe we
I
add
mean, there are
that.
all kinds of things
should that be
that,
29-5-1,
That-
that sentence, and then everything drops down?
It could be that way, or it could be brought in at 29(5-4) as a catch-all
Right.
that says,
I think you put it at the top,
you want to put it at the top?
and then,
Make it that
and
one.
and then you bring it down.
I like that better than putting in parentheses after.
Yeah,
heaven.
I do.
I mean, there are all kinds of things that the owner's
Yeah.
responsible for. Stairs,
yeah.
is he gonna allow children if
You go-
there's stairs to,
You're going to give me that wording too?
Huh?
You give me that wording too?
Yeah.
When you give me your statement and intent wording. We struck the wood burning fire pit. Is there any consensus on the hunting issue, 29(6-8, the way it's written?
I think
You
the
talking
whole
about
thing should be struck.
firearms?
Or you just want to think about it? I mean, what'd you say?
I
Tom?
said the whole thing should be struck.
I'll second that.
You ready with it?
I just think it should be done away with. I don't think you're gonna get to a word that's gonna
Yeah.
satisfy that.
I saw enough heads to
I
straighten.
was gonna say, it's plenty of stuff. to do.
Yeah. And 29.6-9, we talked about the boat. Do you want to add boat there, restricting boats or not?
No.
I think this boat on trailer thing though needs to be thought about.
Well, we say portable. I mean, we can clarify that more.
People are gonna push the envelope.
You could add it after temporary shelters, comma, including boats, comma.
And if it's,
Trailer
if it,
boats or something.
and if it goes through
I'll
to the
just leave
board
it
that,
boats, period.
that y'all wanna allow it on in-water vessels, I think there should be some clarification as that's, you know, not a structure, but it's gotta be written in the first
Yeah.
section, what it's, what we're limiting
In
it to.
water vessel.
Agreed?
I'm fine with rental of a boat on somebody's dock. Sounds like you aren't.
Me?
Well, yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where everybody else stands.
I was talking about on the trailer in the yard, but I thought if.
Yeah, well, I like what Mrs. Booth said, after shelters, comma, including trailered boats.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote that down.
Yeah, for trailable boats. Yeah. Not a boat on the trailer, for sure.
Yeah.
And my point is, if y'all see it that you wanna allow short-term rentals in a boat that's in the water, that would be the only structure that's allowed to have rentals on that particular property. You can't have it on the boat and a house. You follow me?
I think we can accomplish that by going back to 29.3-3, where it says shall be limited to operating in one structure or in-water vessel per property.
That'll-
That takes care of it.
I like it better than just having it carte
Yeah.
blanche.
Okay?
I don't like it at all, but I like it better.
Is there anything else that
Or off your dock, last meeting.
you think should
Okay,
be included in this?
That's, you gotta call the
I
cook.
think that's good for this month. I think it needs to marinate a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm looking forward to the public's comments.
Looking forward to the public's comment. I don't want you to think it's falling on deaf ear, but what I would recommend is to send some stuff to Mr. Farrell, so we'd have time. And again, we've got plenty of time to continue to draft this, and your voices will be heard, I promise you.
And-
Not
and-
not only on this level, but also on the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, and this is online, you know, under, if you go to our website, www.lancova.com, and on the right-hand side, in bolded blue lettering, it'll say Public Meeting Portal. You click on that, and it'll take you to every meeting that the board, Planning Commission, Wetlands Board has had since January of 2021, when we moved to this electronic agenda management system. You can even go back and watch tapes of meetings that have been held. That was the purpose of moving in that direction, so.
And further, you can see this is a living document. Nothing is scribed in stone by any stretch of the imagination, even at this point. So, Mr. Farrell, we got anything coming down the pipe? No zoning? Don, nothing?
The only thing I could say is historically, you all have not met in December. If you did want to meet in December, it would be December the 8th, because the board meets on December the 15th. If not, you would meet the third Thursday of January 2023, which is the 19th.
Well, unless staff sees it as a necessity, I think we'll go with what we had planned, and what we've historically done by not having meetings in December. But if you call us in for emergency, let us know. What do you guys think? Okay with that? No December?
And then we'll have a public hearing on this in January.
No.
Bring it back one more
We'll
time.
bring it back one more time.
Just with the edits that we just gave them? Why do we have to hear it another time and wait a whole nother, that's 3 months till we get public hearing? I think we're gonna edit it after we hear public hearing.
You probably will.
I'm fine with that. Bring it back to public hearing.
In January, January 19th,
Do it.
Yeah.
as revised tonight.
I
As
think there's some
revised.
advantage in having some time to look it over again and,
And again, if, as in public comments come in, you can forward it to us to consider as
Yeah.
well. All right, public hearing in January. Let's do it.
Do that in the form of a motion. So it's on record.
I'll make that motion that we, with that changes that we made tonight, that we forwarded, to recommend a public hearing at our next meeting.
January 19th,
January
2023.
19th, something like that.
Okay, we've got a recommendation on the floor to move this from a consideration item to a public hearing in January. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Drag this out.
No other business yet?
We're gonna edit it some more.
So, okay. No one else has anything else to add?
There will, I believe, we got to go back and check, but I believe you all held off on adopting a revised Chapter 1 of the comp plan, because I think, I remember you all stating that you wanted to go through all the rest of the chapters and then come back to Chapter 1, because that was like a summary of the, like an executive summary of the comp plan. So we'll have to we'll go back and check, make sure that it wasn't forwarded to the board, but you may get Chapter 1 as a discussion item at that meeting also.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.